Very special guest, new guest on Morning in America, Scott Noble. He has got a lot in his resume, but he is here because he is the founder of Noble Royalties, Inc., and chairman of the New American Energy Opportunity Foundation, which is bringing you this show. Scott, we're delighted to have you on. And tell us about America and energy. That opening sentence of that memo you sent me is amazing.
Well, it's tremendous opportunity, and I want to try to define that because my company worked for the Super Committee, the Super 12, to try to come up with solutions at that time for the $2 trillion. And what we found out is this, and it's very important, is that long, painful theory of peak oil is gone and peak gas is gone, and that's the first thing that we have to get our arms around. And what that means is the policies and the plans for the last 30 years really no longer apply to the position that we are today, and that huge opportunity to change, and will probably change 2 generations of thinking, the way that we think and act of the Middle East, the way that we think and act about our potential with manufacturing, having the world's most competitive energy prices, the way that we think and act about the way we need to balance jobs, the government royalty revenue, which was specific to our cause, and private corporate revenue, and we got to balance that with environmental means.
Sure. Do we have the energy that we need for this country, in this country?
Yes, here's the fact, and they're big numbers. In the last 6 years for natural gas, there was leasing in gas shale, there was production in gas shale, and we've discovered over 200 years of future natural reserves. So it's infinitive when you look at all the things that can happen over the next 100 years or so. And what that did is that put us in the same position as coal, to where you can import, export, or consume. That's really national security, and you can maximize your value. Now, in oil, in just 3 years, we've moved it up to 70 years in this new shale leasing, shale discovery.
Amazing.
That's been the big thing right there. Now we have all these reserves, and now you really have to move to what type of plan. The fascinating thing is you're looking at Pennsylvania, which is a major state now, and Ohio. 50% of Pennsylvania, I looked at it last night, 33 of the 67 counties are going to be the next Rockefellers in the Marcellus Shale and the Utica Shale. The same thing, Ohio, 22 of the 88 counties. That's just a massive change. That will put us number 2 behind Iran.
Do we have the resources, all told, for energy more than Saudi Arabia, more than other countries?
Well, when you look, I would say...
If you count everything?
Yes, because we're looking at a different rock now. Before we looked at these little sand beds. Now we're looking at the resource rock, so it's developed by the county rather than by the beach. So it's massive, underground, methodical, predictable mining from one side of the fence to the other. And it's really perfect timing because you can drill pad site drilling, drill one well, and get 30 times, well, one, you drill 6 wells per 640 underneath, but only 1 on top. So it's minimal surface disturbance and about 30 times the reserves, and that's what America needs to know.
Scott, we're talking to Scott Noble, chairman of the New American Energy Opportunity Foundation. What happened here? Was there a breakthrough in, did we get lucky? Was it technology? What caused this? Did we get smarter, or how did we get to this point recently?
Well, as prices go up, you can afford to try new research, obviously. But it's been a long struggle over 40 to 50 years.
But that's a very important point, because people have been complaining about prices, been saying, gee whiz, these companies are making profits. When companies make profits, they can explore, can't they?
That's right. It's research. It's just like pharmaceuticals or anything else, unfortunately.
Yep.
And
Yep.
really the breakthrough is this. We've been able to do horizontal drilling. We've been able to stimulate one.
What is horizontal drilling for the layman?
Well, typically we would drill vertically and go through a 100-foot formation one time. And that's all your exposure. Now you go down and turn 90 degrees, and now you can go out 5,000 to 10,000 feet, so you're getting 50 to 100 times the exposure into a reservoir, and then you frack it every 200 feet. So when you look at the way that you expose yourself, then that's the way we're pulling in these reserves, is taking the pipe to the reserves rather than wait for the reserves to come to the pipe.
So we can get at this. We can have a lot of energy. It can be cheaper. We can be less reliant on other nations. This is a national security issue. The price can be lower for consumers. All these things correct?
Yeah, and the big numbers when we monetized that was $785 billion in non-taxable revenue on these federal leases, can come into our pocket. And what that means is it can help the debt, it can help the deficit, and for the person on the street, it means we won't be taxed at $785 billion. It's actually coming out of the ground, and that eases our pain. On top of that, $5 trillion worth of drilling and production from the operators, because that was on the federal ownership side, which is an eighth of it, is $5 trillion worth of jobs and income. The other option is to send $5 trillion overseas.
Jobs. Yeah, I didn't mention jobs. Thanks for reminding us. What stands in the way, or who stands in the way? When we have these discussions, the phone lines are picking up, by the way, if people want to talk to you about energy. People say EPA is the obstacle. That's what's standing in the way. Is it an obstacle?
Well,
is this administration in the way?
It's a combination of everything. What we don't do is cut leasing, and that's what we've seen with this administration by 50%. What we don't do is cut permits or delay permits, and that's down 33%. What we don't do is delay energy highways, which is pipelines, because we've got to take it to the market. And now you're to the fourth point, which is what we don't do is we don't restrict, we responsibly regulate, and that's really a difference in what I'm seeing in the current administration from the other is they talk, regulate, they've redefined it, they're really restricting and destruction. And I think they mean well, but when you have one area of the country that takes 2 years for a permit, another one 6 months, and another one 14 days, then there's a problem with the best practices from coast to coast. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I'm confused. Again, I'm a layman. We got a lot of questions here for you, Scott, too.
Sure.
If Obama said in the second debate, no, I've granted more permits, more for federal lands. We've done more exploration than anybody ever has.
Well, the reality of that is, did he open up federal lands? Yes. But the truth is he opened up 50% less than Clinton. So he opened up federal lands, but the second part of that comment, and should have been there, was, but actually I've cut it by 50%. So the reality is his mindset, here's what I'm seeing is we're seeing a administration that hasn't reacted to the new discovery. They still think we're not in peak oil. They bet on the wrong horse, which was wind and solar, and the technology breakthrough came in oil and gas, and they're kind of frustrated. I see.
Okay, so there's a difference between Romney and Obama on this stuff.
Yes, by far. By far. Go ahead.
How would you define it?
Well, I think Romney, from a global standpoint, if you want to step back and political, would say that he wants to put the power in the hands of the state rather than the federal government, and it's based on experience. It's because the federal government has been slow, not current, and their goal really in this last administration has been to raise the price of oil, to try to get people to conserve in the way they drive, to force higher miles per gallon, and that may be partly true there, but really to try to make wind and solar, which is very old technology, by the way, make sense. So when you look at where your money should be put, you should embrace, responsibly regulate, not restrict, and develop really the greatest energy source that we've seen in discovery since the rock bit. Romney has that plan out there. How this hurts the people, the difference between $1.82 and $3.82 a gallon is $2,500 per year for a two-car family to drive around. That is a loss of savings or a loss of spending money that's happened in the last 4 years. It's that squeeze in the middle class they've been talking about. This is an attack on the American people that they feel but often don't talk about. So Romney has a plan to responsibly restore the development pace of the federal lands where it was before, to come up with the best practices and how to responsibly regulate, not restrict, and really make the Middle East significant, and that has to be our goal. Insignificant.
Here's a guy I want to talk to about another thing. Pete in Colorado. He's getting a master's degree at the Colorado School of Mines. Pete, you're on with Scott.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Doctor, I had a question for Scott. These oil reserves in Pennsylvania, are they proven oil reserves? I haven't looked at the statistics lately, and I know we have Canada, which is ranked second at about 200 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. What are the proven oil reserves there in the shale that exists in that basin?
Well, it's how you define it. The SEC defines it really is after you hit a well, it's the well right next to you, because then it becomes very limited. But when you look at all the studies, been thousands of wells up there, The proven reserves are second to Iran. They're massive. It's right at 20 million acres, as a matter of fact. And I bought about $30 million worth of minerals and royalties in that area, so we know it from the southwest corner, which is the very rich gas, all the way up to the northeast corner, which is the dry gas. And it's all profitable at different prices, meaning southwest corner makes sense at $3.50 an MCF, okay. The northeast corner at $4.50, and in the middle about $5. But it all makes sense at a certain price. So in that sense, it's proven. It depends on what price that it's super economical.
Hello, Doctor, and hello, Scott. As the doctor knows, I'm in the railroad track construction business, and the Marcellus Shale has been a absolute blessing to our industry, but not only our industry, because the highway systems in these areas are so antiquated that you need rail to transport the product out, but you also need the rail to bring in the equipment and the materials for the drilling purposes. And an example of what your guest is talking is you go to Youngstown, Ohio, on the husk and the corpse of Youngstown Sheet and Tube, which was out of business for a number of years. And there's a new factory going up there, a big new factory going up, employing 1,000 people to build the piping, to manufacture the piping for this industry. Okay. So there's such a ripple effect that that's why, as I conclude, that the voters in these states know which way to go.
Thank you very much, Dave. Comment, Scott?
Well, I know that's true, first of all, and it happened on the west side of Ohio as well, a new steel plant. And that's at risk with the wrong president in there. And right. we need to know that. I'm trying to get America to drill on federal lands and actually off my land, but let's put ourselves in the position that's one-third of Ohio on that eastern, what could remain the Rust Belt, or get all oiled up and back in business again like we're starting to see right now. That's at risk if you have a restrictive president versus someone who's responsibly regulating and developing. That's what's at risk in this regulation. I know the difference between the two administrations, and it's night and day, and we see that, and we've got a current president that's suddenly turned into Mr. Oil and Gas, probably made a little call to Sierra Club just to remind them this is only 30 days old. Don't worry about it. We'll go back to our plan afterwards.
Yeah, like the signal to Medvedev, right? Just we'll be able to be more flexible.
But he's right about and I've tried to bring that up to Ohio, and we will in some ads up there. It's not just the oil, it's the steel, it's the railroad, it's the trucking, it's the restaurants. And when you go to Cuero, Texas, and there's 2,300 people down there in the Eagleford, and you can't sit in any restaurant, it's pretty amazing. And there's a line of cars at a stoplight in a town of 2,300. You're just amazed.
We talked to a guy last night. We had dinner with a guy last night who's in the energy business. Said one of his sidelights, in light of what's happening, he and his wife are going to open a motel in Minot, North Dakota.
Well, that would be great. We see 20 years of drilling still to go on in North Dakota right now.
Right. Quickly, Matt in Phoenix. Real quick, Matt, we're running out of time with Scott. Go ahead.
You got it. Hello, gentlemen. I just wanted to say, how do you connect with normal Americans on this issue? And it's briefly just on the moral arguments. And there's two moral arguments that need to be expressed on all stages. Is that one, Americans will do it leaner, cleaner, and more optimal than any other country. And not to mention, we will produce it in more safer environments than Indonesia and Saudi Arabia. So the workers are safer. They're going to work in optimal conditions, and we're going to be seeing more for our money. Second thing that we need to focus on too is the fact that we would create thousands upon thousands of high-paying jobs.
Good.
That's
great.
True.
Thanks very much, Matt.
It's a superior product with an inferior message, so our job is to get the message out how superior we are, and he's absolutely correct.
Yeah. Now, that's a very important point. We will pay people well, we will protect people, and we'll do it much more cleanly than the other countries will. Isn't that true?
Yes, and it's massive. It's probably the only sector that I can find that doesn't need a loan, debt, any grants, any special federal impulse. It can do it on its own and really take this dismal economy. I can't even imagine. I've been in this business 27 years, being energy independent. We can do that now in a short amount of time, and that's key.
I can't think of anything that has more bangs for the buck. I mean, you're talking about the economy, you're talking about security, national security, jobs, growth, optimism, morale. It's a ton.
And
Scott, we want...
Timing's finally right now. The timing is right because of the technology.